The FIA could... The FIA... The FIA could ruin Formula... Oh!
That's what you get for swearing, Matt.
So if you've been living under a rock, or to be fair, it's January, right? Like we both saw this quite late, so that's why we're doing a podcast today rather than yesterday. Essentially, there's been I would say crazy new FIA guidelines on essentially drivers' misconduct, right? So of course we had the whole Max Verstappen swearing saga, and it was a bit of a head-to-head, but nothing really came of it apart from him being told to do community service. And then I think Hamilton was like, well, I wouldn't do it. And it just sort of, it felt like, at least from the outside, not a lot really happened after that. However, 2025 starts and the FIA come out with some actual pretty much regulations on what you can and can't do.
Can't do or say, yeah.
So a quick summary of these guidelines, right? So you've got different sections, but essentially don't go after the FIA, don't be mean about them, don't call them stupid idiots, etc., etc. Otherwise you will get offences. The first offence, it says here, is €10,000, but I believe for Formula 1 drivers it's times by 4. This is essentially guidelines, I think, across everything. Yeah, anyway, cash. That's essentially what they're after here in some ways. So the first offence, €40,000 is my understanding. The second offence would be 20,000 times 4, so €80,000, plus a 1-month suspension, which is suspended. So it's essentially their final warning of don't do it again, otherwise you are going to be banned for a month. You do it a third time, it's a €120,000 fine, a 1-month suspension, and deduction of championship points. So is Max Verstappen going to be on minus 20 points come the third round of the season?
What a world we live in, that, you know, we've had these amazing Titanic championship battles through the years and all these amazing stories of how it's been won on the circuit. And now we're going into 2025 where I think it could be incredibly close. And then it's like, oh, Max, what was the key moment where you lost the championship? Oh, it's when I called the FIA a bunch of beeps and got a ban. And that's where I lost the championship. What an insane thing. And there's more as well. That this isn't even just, you know, it's the same process of like first, second, third offence, but there's more of like misconduct, political statements and stuff. So, you know, it goes into religious and personal statements that are violating FIA's neutrality, which, I mean, if we throw back to 2020, yeah, the COVID calendar, and of course we had the drivers taking the knee before the race. Do that 3 races, you're getting a month ban. Mental.
My concern is it's going to take the emotion out of the sport, like the raw emotion that we see from drivers. I'm not saying that they should be throwing F-bombs left, right, and centre. That's not it. And I think we all are agreed that they shouldn't just be swearing for the sake of it. But, you know, post-race, or, you know, you're in the press conference and I don't know, it's like swearing. It's like, it's not that deep, in my opinion.
Deep. The Charles Leclerc thing is a great example where I think it's very easy to think when, you know, certain cultures and countries that you live in where maybe swearing is more of a thing, but there are also other parts of the world where it's really not much of an issue. And, you know, they swear on national TV and it's not made this big thing like it is in certain other places in the world. So the drivers and their use of their language and stuff, there's one, a lot of them are speaking a language that's not their first language anyway. So why should, you know, are we really going to see a driver banned for accidentally, you know, say they've sworn twice and then they go, oh, that was a bit of a S race. Oh no. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean. And it's genuinely like a mistake because that's how they talk normally when they're speaking English. That's not their first language. And then how is that worthy of a month ban?
Any other sport, right? Like Formula 1 drivers are put under a huge amount of scrutiny. They're always under the spotlight. And they always have a microphone to their mouth, even in the car. Like, you don't have that with many sports at all. You don't get to hear live reactions, and especially in Formula One, where it's so intense. It's such an intense sport. And then just throwing this in here, it just... Formula One drivers, I would say, are pretty well PR trained anyway. They throw this in here... They're going. You're not going to see much personality because they're going to be scared to say anything that could be deemed as a bit bantery or a bit.
George Russell, Max Verstappen thing was the most exciting kind of war of words between drivers we've seen in about 20 years because they actually showed personality as they threw their PR rule books out the window and said, "Yeah, let's have some beef with each other and say what we really think." And actually, yeah, this is just going to get to the point where they're trying to control these drivers, and it's so ironic, and I know it's not the FIA that ran this series, but the growth of Drive to Survive and Formula One, and you take the swearing side out of that, which it was very kind of non-PG from that side, and the swearing, and Gunther getting really famous because of all his swearing and how it exploded. Yeah, how it exploded Formula One, and this is how this sport has grown massively from that personality side.
I tell you what, the intro that Daniel Ricciardo did of Netflix are a real bunch of C-bombs, aren't they? If you change that to Daniel Ricciardo going, Netflix are a real bunch of silly billies, aren't they? It's not making the cut. No one will care about that. Why are we all pretending like we don't swear? Like, what? Why is this such a horrible thing to do? Oh, they're role models. They're this, that, and the other. Put things in place to not showcase this. Then, if it's that much of a problem,
you joke. I can actually see Max, because he's such a sarcastic individual, that the first incident he has, he goes something like, "Oh, I'm so flipping annoyed by this. What an absolute kerfuffle! Absolutely so silly."
No, sorry, flipping, mate. That's a breach. That's far too. That's getting on offensive there, mate. To be honest with you. So what this also kind of says is you cannot really question the FIA. Anyway, we've popped off. This was the first thoughts, right? We got questions as well, so let's dive into them. P1 Patreon member Michaela asks, "Why on earth would this ever be a good idea for the FIA?" Well, I think it's quite clear that the route in which the FIA are going right now, and the fact that they've changed the ways in which people can be hired and taking control of the FIA. It's, as Tommy, you said earlier, very dictatorial, very we are in charge and we will be in charge forever. Very concerning, to say the least. But this is a power struggle. There's no two ways about it. This is the FIA doubling down and saying, well, what are you going to do about it? And I think we spoke about this last year, didn't we, Tommy, of, well, why don't Formula One and the drivers just break away? Now it becomes an actual real thing, in my opinion, where they are putting letters to the law of you can and cannot do this. Does Formula One, do the drivers say, well, you can't run a sport if there's no one here?
Yeah, exactly. This is what it is. It's not, do they, it doesn't really matter if the FIA think it's a good idea or not. It's their way of going, we control you. And the FIA are probably, they have been embarrassed by Max Verstappen calling him idiots and saying it's an absolutely ridiculous. The kind of open kind of social media backlash and laughter at how ridiculous the sport is being run, the failures with the stewarding, it's all out in the open. The drivers have slated it. Even like Lewis Hamilton, and they said like, you can't wear jewelry, and then he rocks up wearing like 6,000 rings to basically be like, screw you. This is their way of basically like going, well, you're not going to embarrass us anymore. We're in control, and this is how we do it by basically we control you. It does feel like it's a standoff now between Formula One and the FIA, the drivers themselves, and it is a kind of like, well, we're just going to show that you need us, and we'll do everything we want, and we'll control you.
Yeah, this kind of leads quite nicely into the next question from P1 Patreon member PF.F1Ski. Realistically, what actions do you think the drivers, as the GPDA, could take to oppose the FIA? With other contractual obligations towards their respective teams, sponsors, etc., would they go as far as boycotting some media events or even actual GP sessions? I cannot see the drivers falling in line with this, personally. I think they've already been reasonably outspoken using the GPDA social accounts and sort of fighting the FIA in some ways there. Of course, there are a lot of things to take into account, as this question sort of highlights. But at the same time, nothing's stopping them from saying things. They just, imagine they just, right, we're going to put a post out. the FIA are like, well, that's quite mean. First offence to everybody on the grid. Like, it's just... this could go a manner of many ways, in my opinion. But I also think that the F1 drivers will be very outspoken on this, and it will just continue. And we don't want it to take away from the action on the track. We've got potentially one of the best seasons ever coming up, with potentially 4 teams in reasonably close proximity in terms of performance. And yet, a lot of the talk, at least perhaps at the start of the season, will be about this.
It's funny you mentioned about them talking about it. I do wonder if them dropping it randomly in January is a good way that the drivers aren't outspoken at this time of year. There's no media press covering events and things, so they're not going to, if this was done a day before the Australian Grand Prix, every press person and everyone in the paddock has got their microphone in front of drivers going, what do you think about this? But because, that's quite an interesting side of it. But we've seen drivers, albeit a very long time ago, 40 years ago, the drivers went on strike because of something to do with their licenses that they didn't agree with. And it would be very fascinating to see if they would do something similar. The GPDA obviously felt strongly enough to write a letter together. They dropped that picture, didn't they, where all the drivers were together, to kind of, I think, was a bit of a message of like, look, we're together on this. We're together on this. And it's how far they go with it now.
Next question, P1 Patreon member Quinty. Will this cause some drivers to leave the sport? I don't think, not at this stage.
Not this one thing, no.
It depends how far this goes and how crazy we get into this season, and whether it's squashed quite quickly, which I can't see personally, or it goes on forever until something breaks. For me, I think Hamilton, Verstappen, those drivers will probably not care, in the sense of they will just say how they feel, no matter what. They're experienced enough, they're successful enough that they have that power in some ways and that influence.
Yeah, they do. They're allowed to, whereas the younger ones probably feel that they can't. And this is exactly what they're trying to do. They're trying to control the younger ones. So when they when they move up, they're on side, and you know what you can and can't do. But yeah, totally agree.
Okay, let's move on to the next question from Andy Kazama UK. Is it time for F1 to create its own governing body and separate itself from the FIA? Short answer, yes. Long answer, it's probably quite difficult, and that's why they've not done it. It's as simple as that, I think. It really does depend if Formula One are willing to invest in something that's not... It's not easy to just break away from a governing body and do it yourself. And that's quite clear to see with the fact that we've had many question marks over the FIA and how they run things. It's going to have to get worse than this. I think it's going to have to be a case of, say that there are some drivers that revolt against this and like, no, I don't care. I'm going to swear. And you're going to ban me. You're going to have championship points deduction, and that'll be when it snowballs and the fans and everyone else will start to chime in and go, well, this is impacting my entertainment. The sport that I love so much is being hindered by this. And I think as soon as Formula One, sad to say it, as soon as Formula One starts to see a loss in money and a loss in interest in the sport, that's probably when they take action.
It's such a difficult thing. In theory, it sounds like, well, these guys are the ones that are causing lots of problems. Let's just bin them off and do it ourselves, which Formula One, you can argue, has kind of, however much people want to push, like, there's no doubt there's other entertaining series and motorsport series. Formula One is the biggest by an absolute mile, and particularly in that FIA kind of stable, if you like, that they're doing with other series. But the problem is, it's easier said than done, because it's not just a case of going, oh, we'll bring new stewards. The circuits have to be FIA regulated, and then, what do you do about the circuits? And there's contracts there, and there's all sorts of so many other things in the sport that's run in a weird way, that there's the sport and the governing body, and it would take such a massive thing that it makes it incredibly difficult.
Next question, P1 Patreon member, you will not have the drink. Why is it okay for F1 itself to always play the expletive-filled radio messages to the whole world, even if censored, if the FIA thinks swearing is the worst crime ever? I mean, it highlights already, doesn't it, that there's a clash between what Formula One sees as entertainment and building driver personalities and playing a story out, compared to the FIA, who are like the most strict head teacher you could possibly think of. And that's where I'm sure they've clashed many times. But yeah, it's simply a case of F1 believing one thing and the FIA believing another. I can't see I can't see Formula One changing that, though. Especially, we've mentioned Netflix earlier. Are they going to change the whole way that show is done as well to be the most PG, role model worthy program ever? No, because no one would watch it.
Hello, George Russell. How are you doing, old chap? Oh, Max, good to see you. Oh, wonderful. Well, have a lovely day. Yeah, madness. Like I say, it's a different thing, and it just shows that Formula One themselves want to push that side of it because it's entertaining. And I know the drivers don't like it themselves in a way, and this is why I think there's talk of this. Words, deeds, and writings that have caused moral injury and loss to the FIA, which is obviously the swearing side of it. This has to be in press conferences because this cannot come into play by team radio, because the drivers, it's the adrenaline. Footballers aren't mic'd up, boxers aren't mic'd up, like all these other sports where they're probably saying exactly the same thing and they're swearing and because they're it's an intense sport. It's their whole livelihood, and there's so much pressure and there's so much craziness around it that it's very easy to kind of say stop swearing. But they're under insane high pressure situations and adrenaline flowing through them.
Let's go for the final question, which is from P1 Patreon member Katie. Who will be the first to get a ban? Max Verstappen. Have you seen his Dutch interviews? He's going to get banned within 3 sentences, let alone 3 races. So,
and he won't care.
Yeah, exactly. He'll still probably get in his car and go out there, and then what are they going to do?
I've seen a lot of jokes saying that he's just basically just going to get paid paternity leave because he'll just swear and then be like, right, off to spend time with. Yeah, win the
championship. I think you put a tweet out, didn't you? He wins the championship, drops a C-bomb, gets banned for a month, spends time with his kid, comes back next year. I don't think anyone's getting banned. I genuinely don't. I think this is
a threat. It's a threat, isn't it? Let's be honest.
It's a threat. Is it an empty threat? Well, it's written down, so they could try and make this happen.
It opens a can of worms as well, and we could go on for hours about this. But in terms of political, religious, personal statements as well, how far does that go? Is sitting down praying?
Oh, thank God! Oh, was that religious?
Yeah. You sat down praying before a race, and you're caught on TV doing it. Is that a religious statement? Is that where does it go from here?
Hopefully it goes nowhere, because it's utterly insane, most of this, and we just need to put it in the bin and let them just be humans. That's how I would summarise things. Tommy, as we are coming to the end, let's go to your final thoughts. What do you think?
Final thoughts. I'm just looking forward to some cars on track, and we can all forget about this nonsense because it's incredibly annoying. And I just think that the FIA just need to get a grip and just put their egos aside and just start running the sport properly and actually looking after the people that are in it. But they won't, because unfortunately it's just a ego-driven sport, really, isn't it?
They're so concerned about being called stupid idiots that they forget to stop being stupid idiots. That's the problem.
Yeah.
They're concerned more about the insult than actually just doing a good job. Anyway, that is it. Thank you, everybody, for watching and listening. We hope you've had a wonderful January so far. We look forward to some actual things to be excited about that aren't ranty. And that's it. Take care. Lots of love. Sweet dreams. Bye-bye.
Bye.